Um, okay. That opening line goes hard.
I love it.
Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I also love the paragraph, the second line up to there. That's great.
The brilliant thing about this is because dragon riders and, you know,
Mm,
everything about dragons is all about nobility and
mm,
saving and all this stuff. Starting off with a line that breaks that expectation right out of the gate
mm.
and paints them in a way of no, they're not the good guys.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
yeah.
Freaking love that.
I'm 100% there. But then the problem is that here, from here on, it gets clunky,
Very.
and and then suddenly we're with a wizard, and we don't know where we are. And apparently we're boarding a ship or something. I don't know. Like, it just
And the last
like
one is kind of a backstory
yeah,
flashback piece.
yeah,
So look, my finger might not be 100% on the pulse of what the publishing industry is pumping out these days because I have left the actual
mm,
industry. But I still know for a fact that there is a large swath of people that refuse to read present tense third person.
yeah,
I see it all the time now in the unpublished realm where so many people are writing in third person present tense, and I don't understand where they get it from because there's not much published in this
mm,
tense. So I don't understand why people default to writing in present tense. But here's the thing, especially in fantasy, probably 40% of fantasy readers refuse to read third person present tense on principle. It's weird to read. Why would you lose 4 out of every 10 potential customers just because you chose to write in an awkward tense?
yeah.
So,
If you're gonna write present, if you want to write present tense, my advice would always be, wait, this is first person present tense.
no, it's third.
No, it's first. It's first person
Oh, it
present tense.
is. It
Yeah.
is. It is.
It felt like third person
It
because
did. It felt like third person.
we're getting, yeah. But it's first person. It's
No,
first
it's
person
100% in
present
first
tense.
person.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
So
But yeah.
it's
So,
poorly executed first person present tense.
yeah. Yeah. But my
But you're right.
my
It
bigger
is. It
problem,
is
yeah.
first
It is
person.
my bigger
Why
problem
did it
is
feel
that
so much like third?
because we have all of this like basically narration
Yeah,
that like once a month the flight of dragons comes to surface, like it feels narrative, like third
it
person.
really did. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's 100% first person.
It's
I don't
first
even know
person.
why my brain went to third.
But my problem is that I don't know where I am, and I think that you need to concretify from here. That needs to go, and this needs to become a concrete, like, this is where I am, this is why I'm waiting in line. And you also don't need the whole thing of like, I scored big, blah, blah, blah. Like, just, you know, like all that can come a little later.
We can
Like,
learn
get
that
me
organically.
onto the ship to visit mom, since that's what we're doing, apparently.
Yeah, present tense is more prevalent in first person.
It is.
I don't know why this felt like such third person to me.
It's because I was also like I was for a moment I was like it's third person and I was like no man I've just read the I pronoun
Yeah,
like I've 100% just read the I pronoun.
yeah,
Like, why am I struggling with this? Um
that is weird.
yeah,
Releasing your inner dragon. So while Marie shares her screen and gets a couple things ready, today we are going to be doing first page reads. Yay! It's actually highly requested episodes from us. So if you're unfamiliar what a first page read is, basically me and Marie are going to take on the role of an acquisition editor, an agent, whatever. We are not acquisition editors or agents. We are just writers who have experience. And what the first page reads is people have sent us their first page. We're going to read it, and we're going to stop reading when we feel legitimately that an agent or an acquisitions editor would stop actually reading and reject the piece. And then we're going to try to talk about why we feel this way and hopefully give you some insights on things that the industry thinks about. Now, there's a couple things. This is all subjective. It's all opinions. We're not saying all this stuff is reality or fact or any of that stuff. We're just going to do the best we can. Because there's a couple things that always boggle my mind when I'm out and about, like when I'm at a writers conference or whatever. So I'll meet people at a writers conference, either fans of mine or new fans that I'm just meeting for the first time. And they'll be all excited because they're going to be pitching to an agent or an acquisitions editor. And then they come back to me after the meeting and they go, "Oh my gosh, they asked for a submission. They want to see the first 5 pages or the first 3 chapters or whatever." And I feel so bad because I don't want to, be the negative Nilly, but of course they did.
Yeah.
You're a human being sitting across from them. They're not going to go, "Wow, that sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Please leave and never come back." It's just very easy for them to say, so it's 100%, unless, like, I did pitch one time, an agent named Brindy, I think it was Brindy Bowles. Anyway, she didn't take anything from me, but it's because she didn't accept fantasy. The convention I was at, they said that she was looking for fantasy, and when we sat down, she was like, "Yeah, I don't know why that's on there. I don't represent fantasy." And like, if they absolutely don't do something, then yeah, there's nothing they can do for you. But you're always going to get them to ask for that because, again, it's just easier on them than to be mean to you up front. But the reality is there are a lot of things that the industry will reject you for pretty quickly. And so that's what we're going to kind of look at here today. You can agree with us, you can disagree with us, you can make some comments down below. If you would like to be a part of this, all you have to do is send an email to releasingyourInnerDragon@gmail.com. It's down in the comments below. Make sure you say this is for first page read because we also do critiquing. So you can also send us stuff for critiquing, but first page read, make sure it is your first page because it doesn't make any sense to do the first page read without it.
And please limit it to at most 500 words. It's actually more like 300 normally, but 500, between 300 and 500 fits onto the first page in my setup. So I'm willing to accept that.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be, standard margins, double spaced, just like every other manuscript. So 1 page, because we're not here to actually judge your story. We're here. Agents and acquisition editors are incredibly busy. The advice that I always give to people when they're like, "Well, what's the biggest piece of advice that you have when I am submitting?" My biggest piece of advice is stop thinking that you're sending your stuff to somebody who wants to read it. You've got to think about it as, "Oh, I'm getting ready to send this to somebody who hates me, doesn't want to read me, wants to reject me as soon as they can. I am a distraction to them. I am annoyance to them. I am a nuisance to them." And that's the way you need to write your query letter. You need to write it in a way that you understand that the person does not want to read you. And so if you write it like, "Oh, this person definitely wants to read me, so I'm going to be all, this is just the way it is a different attitude.
Yeah.
And you've got to work to stand out of the crowd.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest piece of advice for all of this stuff.
My biggest piece of advice is you need to have something in the first page that will attract the agent's attention sufficiently to get them to keep reading to the next page.
Yeah.
Which is,
there's a reason why I have my Drake's minimum 4 things to have on your opening page. Whose head am I in? Where am I at? Why am I here? And some type of cool thing that's going to keep me reading, whether that's a hook, a question, an incredibly unique situation, or a unique character, or unique whatever, something. And that's why I hate, a lot of people say the hook. The hook doesn't, maybe the hook of the story isn't on that first page, but what does have to be on that first page is something that makes me go, "All right, I haven't seen this
there's got
before.
to be
I'm interested." Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything.
There's got to be something that keeps my attention.
Yes.
Okay. So, without further ado, I'm going to scroll down to our first story and start reading, and we will say when we're out.
And we have not read these.
No, not at all. Not even
I have
a
no
little.
idea what we're about to fall into.
All right, so story one. Faye lay in the familiar hollow that she had worn down over the last few years. The soft dirt molded to her shape, apart from the one stone pressed against her hip. One day I will dig that up, she thought. Squirming, she shifted her weight. Directly in front of her, resting on its foldable legs, lay the steam rifle, its heating elements giving audible ticks as it maintained pressure. Her gaze held steady across the 100 paces of barren earth. The lure she had placed there with her hunting apprentice earlier that morning sat undisturbed. A basket of bones and rancid meat, positioned close to the 12-foot wall of the purple alien weed that marked the boundary of her world. From their elevated position atop the rim of the huge meteor crater where they lived, Faye and her apprentice could see tens of leagues across the magnetic sea. The magnetic sea, endless undulating plains of inhospitable alien weed that had invaded and consumed the earth long before Faye was born. The purple fronds swayed in the wind, swirls of pollen clouds sparkling with static. Okay,
So there was one thing I forgot to say.
yeah,
We are not quitting reading when we personally would stop reading.
yeah,
I probably would continue reading this,
yeah.
me personally. But I do think that an agent is going to stop probably closer to where you would stop, but I wanted to give it just a little bit more.
Yeah, so I feel this in terms of like if this was a polished final book that I'd picked up, I might also continue reading because it is interesting, but the author has made some base mistakes in the editing of this thing that made me quit. So what made me quit was between the she thought up here, because she thought is being used as a speech tag,
Hmm.
right? Which means that that period over there should be a comma.
Hmm.
So that's the first problem. But the reason, but I wasn't out there. I was like, fine, that's just a little like snag. But this sentence, its
Hmm.
heating elements giving slight audible ticks as it maintained pressure. That sentence, I was like, that is a fragmented sentence that shouldn't be a fragmented sentence.
With a comment in it that doesn't belong
Yes,
where it's at.
with a comma that
Yeah.
doesn't belong where it's at. So we have that is that kind of grammatical error,
Mhm.
I think, would throw an agent out.
Yeah. So to explain why she's saying this,
Yeah.
they don't look at your story for a story. They look at it as an opportunity to make a living. And to make a living, that means that they also are responsible for putting out a high quality product. So if in your third paragraph you have a sentence that's not a sentence with a comma that's not a comma, what that tells this agent or acquisition editor is this is rife through here. There's going to be tons of sentences like this. And that means work and effort for me to fix this to get it to the point where it can be released to the public. Do I have the time to spend on this story editing a sentence every third paragraph?
Yeah.
No, they
And
don't have
and
that
the
kind of
thing
time.
is just to make it clear, this is very easily fixable by just saying its heating elements gave slight
Yes.
audible ticks as it maintained pressure. Because
Yeah.
that's the problem. You're using the continuous verb, but it's not in a clause.
Right. It's the actual, yeah, you're trying to use it
Yeah.
as the actual action of the sentence, but it's
Yeah.
not. There's no
But it's
action
not.
in this sentence.
Yeah.
Um, the heating element is giving ticks as its main pressure,
Yeah.
but it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
That's a
So,
descriptor of the heating element, not the action.
yeah. For this to
You
be a
know, if
sentence, you would either say its heating element was giving slightly audible ticks, or its heating element gave audible ticks. One of
or
those two.
or this becomes an its heating element giving audible ticks as it maintained pressure while she looked through the
Yeah.
scope,
Scope or whatever.
whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then that becomes your sentence, and this
Yes.
becomes a
A
dependent
clause.
clause. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
So
either way, this is a clause. This is a sentence clause as it stands right now, but it's being used as a sentence, which makes it a fragmented
right,
sentence.
right. It's a dependent clause, but there's nothing there that it's
Depends
attached to.
on. Yeah.
Um, so that is a valid reason for an agent or an acquisition editor to stop reading because they're like, this is too much work. I don't because that's really what has happened in the industry. Agents now are primarily the biggest level of editing that books get, which is terrifying because they shouldn't be the editor on a project. But publishing houses don't have the money anymore.
Mm,
Margins keep getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and it just they don't have. You got to understand 75% of all books, well, about 65% of all books that a publisher publishes, they lose money on.
mm,
I mean, they run a business where 65% of the products they buy, they never recoup their money from.
yeah.
And then, and it might be closer to 50% or whatever, but then there's a percentage of them that are my level, called a B-level author, where we not only cover our costs, but we make some money for the publisher.
Mm,
And then you have the A-listers, and they're the
yeah.
ones that actually make all the money
Make the
for
money. Yeah.
which is why they're treated like royalty,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that are paying all the bills and covering the cost of the loss of the
Mm,
50-60% of the books that are losing money. So the margins are just slimmer and slimmer. Printing is more expensive. Shipping is more expensive. All of these things those are the two big costs. And so agents now have kind of become the editors of the world, and they don't have a lot of time.
yeah.
So they just something like this, they're going to just go, wow, I'm probably going to end up having to do too much. I kept reading because you had already covered. I knew why you quit. So I was like, okay, that's covered.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if something actually hooked me.
Mm,
And we have some generic stuff in here that, like alien weed. I don't know what that looks like. I don't
yeah.
know what that is. I don't know why it's relevant. Telling me telling me something is alien weed and expecting me to go, ooh, that's unique, because it doesn't mean anything. There's no context to it. And then also, there's no interiority. I mean, there's a little bit of interior. We have a inner monologue dialogue, so that's
Mm,
interiority. But I don't understand why I'm here. Again, that was the third thing of the four things that we want to do as soon as possible. Why am I here? If this girl is protecting against something, because it's life or death, that's why she's here. That I need to know, not this stone that's poking her in her familiar hollow. That's not what's going to hook me. What's going to hook me
yeah.
is, she ignored it because if she took her eyes off the horizon, the enemy could be upon her any second,
Like
in a beat of the heart.
I understand that she's hunting from the lure that she placed there and so on. But
Right,
but why?
right.
Why is she hunting with a basket of bones and rancid meat? Is it because her people are starving and need
Yeah.
food? Is it because she's hunting
Does her
some
stomach
dangerous
growl while she's sitting
predator?
there?
Like what is the reason for the hunt?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
that. Why am I here?
yeah.
But nothing reached out and grabbed me.
Yeah.
So we have weed seed, we have alien weed, we have, um, the magnetic sea. All of these things sound interesting,
Mm,
but they're not defined.
It's very
So
it's very like generic landscape. Like how big are the
it's
weeds? How
it's very generic, with, instead of using generic words, using a word that sounds cool, but
Mm,
since it's not defined, like the magnetic sea, what does that look like? What does it
yeah.
smell like? What is it, you know, what what does it mean to Faye? Is it
Mm.
cool to her? Is it a frightening to her? Is it invading to her? You know, does she hate it? Does she worship it? You know, this is the interiority that I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
then now the magnetic sea, one, I can see it. You don't just say magnetic sea and then expect me to make up what that looks
Yeah.
like and what that feels like and what does that even mean? So by giving it to me and letting me actually experience the magnetic sea and then giving me how Faye relates to it.
Yeah.
Now I'm invested in the magnetic sea or the alien grass or the weed
Yeah.
sea or whatever. All these things. So they're cool
Like,
terms.
and it like it is interesting that it invaded and consumed the earth. Like all of that is interesting, but it's not specific. It's just these little tiny little hints of like something. Like how does is Faye at danger from the from these weeds consuming her? Is that what do they do? Like,
And again, all of this stuff is what we're talking about in what the industry's very busy and
mm,
they're only going to give you a couple paragraphs and that's it. I would continue reading this. Like
mm,
everything that I just bitched about, a lot of readers are going to hit magnetic sea or weed sea or
mm,
alien grass or whatever. And they're going to go, okay, those are interesting terms. Let me keep reading to find out what they are.
mm,
But there's opportunities to give us what they are here.
yeah,
You know, instead of the magnetic sea, endless, undulating plains of inhospitable alien weed, I can't see that. Like,
mm,
because I still don't know what a magnetic sea is. So it's endless, okay, but it's an endless void of nothingness because I don't know what it is. It's undulating, okay, so it's a bunch of stuff that I haven't imagined that's undulating. It's inhospitable, but I don't know what it looks like, so I don't understand why it's inhospitable. So it's a bunch of terms. And again, me personally, I would keep reading.
mm,
There's enough in here that you have the cool terms. The missed opportunity though is to capitalize on these terms right here.
yeah,
You know, bring me into this girl's world and make me feel like I'm there. And that's what we're talking about. And unfortunately, the industry really needs to be hooked that quick for the
yeah,
most part. Because they've got 300 submissions that they're going through today before
yeah,
they can start their job. Remember, this is not their job. Yes, they have to look
mm,
for new clients, but that's not their job. Their job is to sell their current clients. So they're going to
yeah.
burn through these as quickly as possible so that then they can start their day.
So yeah, so watch your grammar, and give a little more around what this magnetic sea actually looks like, and how Faye feels about the magnetic sea. What is her, you know, feeling towards
Mhm.
it? All right, story two. Pacing impatiently, Lucian stomped on the red and black checkered floor, swiftly dodging the incoming speckled morning light from the ancient colored windows. It had been an annoying morning waiting for the distinguished members of the Treasury to convene in the gathering room. Turning abruptly, he walked to a large oak door. The light danced across intricately curved filigree. Those old fools, he ridiculed, startling the two youngsters on either side. Yeah, I'm going to read a little further. Making me wait like this is preposterous. They wouldn't do it to Michael or even Gale, senile old fools. The guards stood resolute, awkwardly avoiding any eye contact. Scraping chairs and muffled voices filtered through the door, antagonizing Lucian. Fighting the urge to burst through, he recited an oath to the three-headed mother. He did not believe in her anymore, but it helped cleanse his frustrations. A little bit longer, he thought, continuing his restless pacing. Okay. So I'm going to say up front that unlike the previous one, there is a lot more interiority there, and that's good. Um, in terms of like you can see his impatience and his irritation and all the rest of that. Downside, the grammar needs help. um, so the sentences that swiftly dodging the incoming attack.
It's not a sentence.
Yeah.
It's the
Again.
exact same thing we talked about in
Yeah.
the last one, only theirs was in the third paragraph. This is the second sentence.
Yeah.
What
Um,
swiftly dodged the incoming speckled morning light
yeah.
from the ancient dash colored windows? That's a hyphenated word.
This as well, startling the two young guards on either side. Not a
Right,
sentence.
right, not a sentence.
Um,
Also, when you use speech tags that are not common,
yeah.
the industry hates that.
Yep.
So he ridiculed is going to get ridiculed
Yeah.
by
You
the
should just say he
industry.
said.
Yeah, they're it is something that they see over and over and over again, and it just gets grating on them. That is one of most agents and acquisitions editors, one of their biggest peeves is using a speech tag like he ridiculed.
Yeah.
Um,
The other thing that I just want to say here, because it ties into this he ridiculed, this piece is rife with giving me the same information multiple times.
yep,
So this clause, pacing impatiently, tells me exactly the same as Lucian stomped on the red and black checkered floor. Okay?
yep,
These two clauses do not give me, this clause doesn't give me any information and can just be cut, and it can just be Lucian stomped on the red and black checkered floor. Because
right,
that is the same as pacing impatiently. And he ridiculed could be just he said, because those old fools is by its nature as dialogue ridiculing.
yeah,
So it doesn't need to be um, added to the speech tag ridiculed either.
right.
It creates a tautology.
So if this was, if this was something that had just gotten read in the writer's room, my recommendation would be something like, okay, the dialogue already says it in a ridiculed manner. You don't go, those old fools,
Yeah.
lovingly. Those old
Yeah.
fools. I
Yeah.
love them so much. I mean, you can, but that's not during when somebody's
Yeah.
stomping and
Yeah.
doing all this other stuff. So what I would say is instead of wasting a redundant crappy speech tag, that's the perfect opportunity for how those old fools make him feel.
Yeah.
This is where I want to see some interiority. You know, he wished nothing more than to see their heads on pikes or whatever. Anything that tells
Yeah.
me how he feels about those old fools. And this is where you get there's already at least two, three, four. There's in the first two paragraphs. There's at least four, five. There's a lot of L
The
adverbs. There's
Yeah, they
five,
like
six.
I am not anti ly adverb. Like I'm not a a hater, but damn, they're prevalent here.
Yeah, there's six in the first two paragraphs.
Yeah,
Why do we rail against ly adverbs? First of all, yes, neither one of us, both of us use ly adverbs.
yeah,
We're not saying never use an ly adverb,
yeah,
but they are always crappy telly verbs. Like they
yeah.
just are. There's no way to get around that. So you only want to use them. Like sometimes the door just slowly closes.
Mm,
I don't want to expand upon that. I don't want to explain upon that. It's a tell, but it's the tell that I need to use.
yeah,
All of these are places where showing me his pacing impatiently is going to have more effect on me. Showing me, instead of just telling me that they're intricately carved filigree, what does that mean?
yeah.
What does that actually look like?
What is it? What does intricately carved filigree look like? What is it
Right.
carved into?
And then I'm starting to see the architecture of the world and I'm starting to get pulled into the
Mm,
world. You know, the guard stood resolute, awkwardly avoiding any eye contact. Show me that because
yeah,
then I'm going to feel their awkwardness. You
yeah.
know, the guard
So
stood
yeah,
resolute, but their eyes darted around, avoiding um,
eye
meeting,
contact. Yeah,
well, avoiding meeting Lucians. And then
yeah.
again, perfect opportunity for some interiority where he's like, yeah, yeah, if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't look at me either. You know,
Mm,
that's where that interiority is. How does them not looking at me make me feel? So the grammar is why I raised my hand. I think in the first paragraph, there were so many grammar problems that, again, these are red flags for an agent. They're going to go, you know what? I'm going to have to rewrite this thing for this writer before I can present it to an acquisitions editor. I'm going to get laughed out of New York if I take this down to Tor and say, hey, look, I've
Mm,
got this great new book that you should look at. And they're going to be like, look at the grammatical errors. What are you doing to us? Even like turning abruptly, comma. That's an
yeah.
introductory clause. So,
Yep.
all of these things lead to meaning work. Now,
Yeah.
personally, was there anything that would make me not read this? Yes, because I don't read political stuff. So a book that starts off with this type of start, I'm not going to read. But Marie loves political stuff. But that's a personal thing. That has nothing to do with
Yeah.
reality. That just has to do with how we like. I mean, I'm a Conan fan. Start
So,
with chopping people up for me.
so I might continue reading, but honestly, like fragmented sentences do annoy me because I have to read them twice.
Yeah.
So and unless they're like impact, unless they're clearly not a mistake, fragmented sentences. So I might not continue, given that there were two.
There's a lot of grammatical errors in
Yeah.
this. And unfortunately, and again, we're not we're not critiquing this from a story standpoint. We're
Yeah.
critiquing this from, I'm an agent. I'm going to have to be the editor on this project before I can even have hopes of making money
Yeah.
on it. And this is too much work for me.
Yeah. My advice to any author out there is to, if you do not have a comprehensive grasp on English grammar, um, do some courses on it,
Yeah.
and
And
get
even
that
it,
comprehensive grasp.
and even if you were to self-publish this,
Yeah.
even if the story is good, and if the story is good, a lot of readers do overlook all these grammatical errors. But enough don't that you will get enough one-star reviews from readers who hate bad grammar that it
Mm.
will drag your rating down to probably below a 3-star. And then those that will overlook the grammar won't buy it because no one buys a book that has 2.9 stars or 2.8 stars or whatever. You just don't buy those books.
Yeah.
So even if you're like, well, I don't care about the industry, I'm going to self-publish, so I don't need to worry about grammar.
And you do.
You do,
You do.
because your star rating is going to suffer, because I guarantee you there are readers out there who will take time out of their day to give you a 1-star review just to rail on the fact that you don't know grammar.
Yeah.
And that is your marketing. That is literally how you make your living when you're self-published, is by your reviews.
Yep.
So yes, the industry is going to reject it because it's going to be too much work to fix it. But don't think that you don't need grammar when you're self-published,
Yeah.
because you do.
All right. So this one is grammar. Right. Next. So this is story 3. Phantom echoes of prepubescent squeals were still reverberating in Jane Alder's ears as she closed her front door, hidden once again from the outside world, after another day of shaping little lives. She walked into her kitchen, took a tin of dog food from a cupboard above the sink, and served it along with some tap water to Stanley in his bowls. For herself, she covered a plate with a portion of beef stew she had left in the slow cooker all day. The late March evening stretched ahead of her, and she planned to spend the entirety of it sitting in her armchair, feet up on a cushion she'd placed on top of a coffee table, and a plate on her lap, watching old ITV Jane Austen adaptations. She carried her dinner into the living room and turned on the television before taking position in her armchair. The wait for Stanley to finish eating and join her was not long. She held a fork in her left hand, and with her right she stroked her Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. The familiar smack of her front door's letterbox fluttered between the walls of her narrow hall. No, Stanley, don't bother. It's just the rush of dog fur brushing beneath her fingertips lasted less than a second, leaving her stroking thin air by the time she could say junk mail. The dog returned moments later, not with a gaudy flyer in its mouth, but with a small plain envelope. Stanley dropped it onto the floor in front of her. She put her plate down onto the coffee table while picking up the envelope so that she could hold it in both hands. There was no stamp, but that was no surprise if there had been writing on the envelope with a name, James, Jane Alder. Okay, I'm out. Um, so I'll tell you why I actually quite enjoyed the opening. The reason why I'm out is these sentences are so convoluted.
And the paragraphs.
Yeah,
There's at least 3 paragraphs in that first paragraph.
yeah.
Probably the same number in the second paragraph.
The opening sentence is 3 lines long. It's by itself. By itself, it's 32 words in a single sentence. That is
Mhm.
them's a lot of words. And
And the second sentence not that much shorter.
yeah, and um then this sentence is the one that I was like, there was no stamp, but that was no surprise if there had been. It would have it
As
would have
if
been
there had
delivered in
been.
the morning. I was like, what?
I
And
get what she's trying to say, but
yeah, but it should
because
have
it's
been broken up into at least 2 sentences here or something.
yeah.
Um,
There was no stamp.
yeah,
Um, but that was no surprise, period. Had there been a stamp, it would have been delivered in the morning.
yeah. Then
You know,
then it would
that's
read clearly. So, but I actually quite liked the opening. It had a very cozy feel to it. Like it had a very like, I'm home. I'm a teacher, so I knew immediately that she's a teacher and that she's home and that it's weekend and that she's gonna sit in front of the TV with her dog. And I was like, I can get behind that, you know. And then I'm assuming the letter is the thing that shatters the weekend. And it happens nice and early. So I can get behind that, you know. So you've got like 2 paragraphs of getting to know the character, which is nice. Although I would break that up into like 4, maybe 5 paragraphs, because the paragraphs are also quite long. And and then you get your cozy evening interrupted with a letter, which is just really like frustrating. And I get so all of that I'm behind, but these run-on sentences,
and
they
paragraphs.
yeah, and the paragraph lengths, it just got too convoluted for me. Um, Like, and the thing is, it's fine when there's like one long sentence, right? Like she walked into her kitchen, took a tin of dog food from the cupboard above the sink, and served it along with some tap water to Stanley in his bowls. Like, yes, that's one long run-on sentence. But it doesn't matter because it's all kind of standard, easy reading. It just gives you what she's doing with the dog, right? But some of these sentences are convoluted enough that you have to think of what they're trying to say to you. And that's the problem.
Hmm.
So that was for
And
me.
again, how you write, I think I say this every time we do this, but
Mm,
one of the first agents I befriended, and I befriended him because he doesn't represent anything that I write. We were out to dinner, and this is early in my career, and he said we were talking about stuff like
mm,
this, and he goes, "Yeah, I need one sentence. If I read the first sentence, I know whether I'm going to reject it or not right then." And back then, we're talking 25 years ago. I was like, "You're an idiot. No way."
mm,
And then, now 25 years later, I'm like, "Oh, now I understand what he meant." Because I
mm.
pretty much need one sentence. And because
Yeah,
it's
this
how a
was
writer
too long.
writes, how a writer writes is how a writer writes. It's your
Yeah.
fingerprint. So if your opening sentence is 30 whatever words long and your opening paragraph is actually 3 paragraphs, because you're shifting, remember, a paragraph is one moment of time, one character's one moment of time.
Mm,
So we're at the door, but now we're going to walk into our kitchen and we're going to deal with that. That's a new paragraph. We're doing something
mm,
else. Now we're going to, walk into the TV room and we're going to do that. That's going to be a new paragraph. It's a new
mm,
thing. Why do we break this up? Because it helps the reader compartmentalize this stuff so they can imagine it better in their head movie.
yeah.
And it just helps the reader. When it's this big, long, convoluted thing, it all starts to blur together for them. Believe it or not, a paragraph break helps them break those up into little vignettes little
Yeah.
moments of time, and then they just consume it better. That's why they exist. Otherwise, why would we have paragraphs at all?
Mm.
I mean, they're there to
Paragraphs
help the reader.
paragraphs help the reader take in the information well. So yeah. So to this author, I would say I like the opening, I like the introduction of the character, but I think you're gonna need to work on your sentence lengths and your paragraph lengths to make this more easily consumable by a reader.
Yeah, I didn't have necessarily a problem with the read or anything like
Mm,
that. Again, I popped it because as an agent, I'm going to go, there's too much work here that I'm going to have to
yeah,
deal with to do with this.
yeah.
However, a little bit of interiority, not interiority per se, something other than a mundane day. I don't, because I didn't have anything that threw me out or anything like that, but maybe
So I'm not worried about that because I'll tell you why I'm not worried about that. Like I can see down here that the letter has got like one hell of a hook. Do you understand? So we are entering her life on what she thinks is a normal average day. And her life is about to get shattered by the letter. So two paragraphs, a couple of
right.
paragraphs of like normal average Friday evening, as long as it gives me the same feeling of like I'm gonna sit in front of my TV with my dog and watch some Jane Austen and feel all like happy and cuddly inside. I'm like, I can get behind that because I know as a reader,
Gonna
that's not,
stay.
yeah, that's not how it's gonna stay. So I can
Yeah.
enjoy this moment before the earthquake comes. And the earthquake comes fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I said I'm not, that's why I was struggling to say what I would add because there's nothing in here that is bad or negative or anything like
Mm,
that. I would just encourage them to maybe try to look for something that hooks the reader. Like that opening, I feel like there's something to that opening paragraph, you know, with how she instead of the telly after another day of shaping little lives, I
mm,
think maybe if you expanded upon that and actually made that personal,
mm,
that line right there could make me fall in love with Jane Alder right up
mm.
front.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I just felt like there was just a little bit something that could do to make me actually care a little bit quicker.
A little bit more connection to why she wants to be hidden from the outside world
Yeah.
and how she feels about her job as a preschool teacher kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Just something. Like I said,
yeah.
there's nothing in there that's wrong, but there's
A little
opportunities.
bit, yeah, a little bit more about how she feels about her job and how she feels about hide why it's so important for her to be hidden and so on. That would be not go
Right.
amiss. But yeah,
Yeah. There's just
like I say,
opportunities.
yeah, there's some opportunity there. But I do like if it wasn't so convoluted in its sentence structure, I would have
Hmm.
continued. So
Yeah. Agreed.
all right, story 4. A horseless carriage glinting from wheels to roof with metal signaled that someone was going to disappear today. And the home it stopped in front of was Ursa's. Her burlap sacks of chicken feed, each half her size, pressed like bricks against her shoulders. Just looking at the carriage stole the breath from her lungs. Its sheer weight suffocated her. Its leaden wheels trampled the tomato crop in front of her home and sank inches deep into the soil. Steep lines cut into the earth, exposing the carriage's tracks leading here. Ursa's heart went cold. She had only seen people ride these things once, a distant memory. She remembered burying her face into her father's legs as it came and went. Her father had rubbed her back. The comforting gesture sparked defiance in Ursa. She banished the fear as quick as it came, and she lifted her head and forced her eyes to take it in. She did the same now, drawing a ragged breath. Her grandmother was the only one home. Ursa had volunteered to fetch the weekly feed for the chickens, even without a horse. She'd only been gone a short while. The door to her home hung ajar, its white paint peeled from age. The sun's rays beat upon her, but stopped short of the darkened foyer within. Whatever waited, her grandmother was facing it alone. Ursa would set fire to the royal castle itself if it meant seeing her grandmother smile. So, fingernails digging into her carried goods, she drew a long breath and shouldered her way inside. Her grandmother had never moved from her rocking chair in the living room. She didn't move even as a man in a sweeping grey coat stormed forward and threw both hands against her. She and the chair crashed to the floorboards. Her lips parted, but Ursa could not hear over the pounding of her own heart. "Try to be cheeky with us again, old hag," the man sneered, dusting his hands like he'd completed honest work. "And maybe we'll have to turn you in along with the star scent you're hiding." He kicked his muddied boot into her stomach, in pieces. Ursa dropped the chicken feed. She thought she heard one of the bags ripping. Countless pellets spilled across the floor and the doorway. She bolted forward, heart racing. Grandma! All she could see was silvered hair, head bowed into her chest. A second stranger had been rifling through kitchen cabinets in the neighboring room. He stopped to follow the girl with his eyes. Ursa stared back, making out his cowl, lined up the inside with chainmail. His sweeping slate-grey capelet coat darkened his shadow. Atop the front left side of the capelet, the golden symbol of tipped scales shone like he and his partner, who dressed the same, were paragons of good. Except they'd just hurt Ursa's grandmother. "What's your name, girl?" the man in the kitchen asked, brow rising. "My name is You're Ugly. Get out." Ursa threw her body in between the fallen grandmother and the man who'd shoved her. She threw her fist high above her head and pounded them against the man. The chainmail beneath his coat rattled. The man did not react to the attack. He glanced down, then over at his partner. "There's only one kid living here." His gloved hand shot down, seizing Ursa by the wrist. "It's her." Okay. What threw you out where I stopped, or where you held up your hand?
And I think an agent might stop sooner.
Yeah.
So there is no deep interiority. Things happen in a weird order for me. That's actually when I was out, because it was like
Mm.
all this stuff happens to grandma and she doesn't react to it until after it's all done. And then she reacts to stuff like the guy just kicks his grandmother in the stomach, and so she drops her sack of grain and then goes, "Did I just hear the grain bag rip? Because that would suck." Like,
Yeah.
why is she even thinking about the grain and the bag and any of that? Her grandmother just got kicked in the stomach. So that's a
Yeah.
weird tonal shift there. Like, why would you think about that here? And because of the lack of connection to Ursa, because there's a lot of opportunities in here to make me, and that opening sentence is really cool. I kind of feel like that's probably going to be the case going through the whole thing, that she's always going to feel, I mean, I hate to say it like this because to me this is a huge insult, but she feels the same as like Bella from Twilight.
Mm-mm. No, so I don't agree quite
Kind
with
of
that.
personality-less.
So
I'm saying
yeah,
personality-less.
I don't know. Like I don't agree with that. But I will say that this flashback threw me sideways because this whole thing is a flashback to
Hmm.
when her father did this. And now she forces her head up, drawing in a ragged breath. Like, and that's what you mean, I think, when you say that things happen in a weird order, because
Yeah.
actually this and that is happening at the same time. And I understand that you're trying to show like what she had, previously drawn strength from, but I don't think you need the flashback right now. And putting it in there takes the reader out of the moment of like this carriage being there and being a problem. Because that's all you
I mean,
need. That's all you need to focus on right now.
so like her grandmother had never moved. Well, first of all, that's a weird tense shift.
Yeah.
Um, because we'd never seen her in the rocking chair. So her
Yeah.
grandmother, you know, didn't move from her rocking chair as
Yeah.
the man loomed over her or whatever. So it's a weird past perfect tense there that I don't understand why we went to past perfect, because it seems like
Mm.
it's happening right now. But we get that. We get him yelling at her. We get him throwing her to the ground. We get him kicking her before she even drops the bag of chicken feed. And then it isn't until she drops the chicken feed and starts to run forward that she yells grandma. Normally a person, like, you walk in the door, something bad has happened to someone you love and you scream their name like then,
Yeah.
and then you react. So it felt out of order to me. It was hard for me to try and imagine the scene. Maybe it's why I felt so disconnected from Ursa, why I felt
Yeah.
like she had no personality. Maybe it's just because of the order. So I'll I'll give you on that.
Mm.
But I'm just saying I didn't connect to Ursa because it seemed like she stood there watching this thing happen, not doing anything, and then after it was over, she was like, "Oh, I should do something." And then
Yeah.
and that makes me feel like she has no personality. Like she's just this
Also,
slate.
like this line, Ursa would set fire to the royal castle. Man, that felt tally. Like it felt overwrought. And I would rather have seen her, like, whatever weight that her grandmother was facing inside. Um, Fingernails digging into her carried goods. Ursa ran, was facing it alone.
Actually,
Ursa ran inside.
if you're really wanting to get there quickly and you're willing to burn the royal castle down to
Yeah. Why
save
don't
your
you?
grandmother, throw the
wh-
rice now, like,
Yeah.
or
Throw the
whatever
chicken
it is.
feed. Yeah. Toss the
Yeah.
chicken feed. Yeah.
Why would you go in with it if you know that your grandmother's in
Yeah.
peril, or if you
Yeah.
suspect your grandmother's in peril?
So
It just felt out of order to me.
I think this piece has potential.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, I kept reading and I was kind of like I was following and it had potential for me. But um in the first page you don't want definitely in the first page you don't want any flashbacks, nothing. So that flashback should ideally go. Secondly, you want to try um and show as much about the character in that moment. So show her running in to defend grandma. Yeah,
And again, this comes back to, because it's so out of order, it's a red flag that tells me that the entire thing is written this way.
yeah,
What Again, how we write is our fingerprint. Since these are all out of order here, I'm going to imagine that they're all out of order. Before you go, I do want to say
yeah,
one last thing. Frickin' loved the line. My name is You're Ugly.
yeah.
Get I love that line.
That was
Um,
beautiful.
it
Yeah,
was it was awesome. So stuff like that shows.
yeah. Like, and the opening was good. The opening sentence was good. There is a lot of potential here. It needs some structure polish, some story
Yeah.
structure polish.
And then I would like to feel her shock and terror come over her. I would like to feel that shift from terror, like as he's rough handling
Mm,
grandma. That's the time where, like, again, as soon as he lays hands on her, she should be reacting, because that's what normal people do. You don't stand there and
mm,
watch an entire scene happen and then
yeah,
react. So that, again, that's where I get my feeling of her being a
yeah,
slate. But the seeing him manhandling the grandmother is your transition point in emotions, to go from shocked and fear and oh my goodness, what's happening, to not on my watch. Like,
mm,
no. Um, and so you need to transition that. You need to have that transition in the emotions. And then the reader's like, yeah, you get her, girl.
mm,
And then when she says a line like that, because she's already fighting and she's already kicking and scratching and biting and doing whatever she has to do to get this guy away from her grandmother. Um, then when she snaps her head up and says, "My name is You're Ugly," like, now she's this hissing cat, just this ferocious mama bear fighting
yeah,
for something she loves, and it just doesn't happen there.
yeah,
So and that's just a red flag that tells me I'm going to have to do a lot of work on this.
yeah. All right. Story 5. I hate boats. They were slow, boring, tedious things that took too long to get anywhere. When I left Port Titan, Cash cried less than I did. She didn't want to come, and I didn't want to stay. You never forgot someone like her, my first love, lover, and traveling companion. She told me to seek her out when I returned. Whatever, whether that was a century or a millennia, I'd find her. Even if I planned for only 10 years, I knew the first two places to look, City of Earth or Ashlot. The captain of the Quintus said the trip would take around 6 months to arrive at Pepper Island. He allowed me to come so long as I flew aerial observations, if it came to it, and a warrior to protect the ship. The passage helped. As boring as it was, it gave me time to cry out my feelings without being seen. Normally, I didn't care about others seeing me cry. This was far too personal. Tapa, my lovely red dragon partner, let me cry in peace. Cash and I had been together for 9 years. We trained from age 12 at the camp until age 19 and hunted Campbell, the man who attempted to break the bond. Tapa kept, yeah. I, okay. So, I, I don't know where we are. I'm getting a backstory.
It's all Telly backstory.
Yeah,
It's all Tell. The whole thing
yeah.
is Tell.
And I'm being told about Tapa, my lovely red dragon partner.
Out
I
of
have a
nowhere.
dragon?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
Like,
was like.
open with that. Um,
I leaned against my red dragon's belly as I stared into the cloudless sky or whatever. Like, you know, or, as the boat rocked back and forth, like,
yeah,
get me in the moment. Don't tell me. And that's all this is. This is just one giant info dump of backstory.
yeah. Also, I know more about Cash
And how she feels.
and how she feels than I know about the narrator.
Yeah. So this falls into one of my Drakeisms, which is this is not written for a reader.
Yeah,
This is written for the writer. The writer loves this story. The writer understands the relationship between the character in Cash and the character in the dragon and the character in the world and all of this stuff. And so they're writing it in a way that they find cool, knowing all this information.
yeah,
We were just talking about this last night in the writer's room. You have to write it understanding that your number one job is teaching the reader the things they need to know and understand.
yeah,
I don't care about Cash. I don't know Cash. I don't know this character. So if we do the math of me not caring about Cash and me not caring about the POV equals me not caring about their relationship.
mm,
I don't care that she cried when he left. I don't care. Like, there's nothing in here that I understand yet. So their
mm,
relationship means nothing to me. It means everything to the writer because the writer understands the depth of Cash and I's relationship. But you have to teach that to us.
yes,
We need to understand that so that when now we find out that Cash cries when I leave, we're like, yeah, she's broken. I don't want you to leave either.
mm,
But I don't know them. They're
yeah,
strangers. And so this is written because they're not strangers to you, so you wrote it this way without realizing they're strangers to everybody else who's going to start this piece.
mm,
So not connected to the story, don't care about the POV, don't care about anything that's going on. Find out he has a dragon half the page down.
yeah,
Like, that's awesome.
yeah,
So yeah. And it's all Tell. And since it's all Tell,
mm,
it's hard to sell a book that's all Tell these
yeah,
days. I realize that when you read the big books from the late 1800s, early 1900s. I mean, I just reread all of the early Conan stuff. It is so hard to read for me. The stories are great. Love the character. Ooh, writing is rough. And it's just hard to sell something like that these days because we have changed as a society and the readers have changed on what they want to read.
Yeah. But yeah, my biggest problem is this is basically just backstory.
Mhm.
There's nothing here to connect me to the character's current moment. The dragon is the cool thing. Lead with a dragon. And then,
Or, I mean, it's the cool thing that's here.
yeah.
There could easily be something way cooler than that. Like, what is the reason he's leaving?
Mm,
What is he seeking when he goes on this trip? You know, what is his ultimate goal? Yes, the dragon is cool.
yeah.
But I'm just saying
Why didn't
there
I
could be
want to
something else
stay?
even cooler.
Yeah,
Right.
like why didn't I want to stay in Port Titan? You know. So, yeah. Anyway, so
But then you keep going on, and it's just, just look at how Telly, like Cash and I had been together for 9 years. Let me
mm,
tell you that. We trained from age 12 at the camp until age 19. Let me tell you that.
mm.
We hunted Campbell, the man who attempted to break the bond. I'm just telling you, we hunted Campbell, and I'm telling you that he attempted to break the bond.
And why do
Now, I
I
don't,
care about Campbell and his bond breaking? Like,
right. I don't know what the bond is. I don't know who Campbell is. I don't, again, that's what I'm saying. You've got to write in a way where you're teaching me this stuff so that
yeah,
then I am invested in it. And so therefore, when I find out, like, if I understand that the bond is the thing that literally connects the gods to humanity, and it's the only reason why there is peace on earth. If I understand that, and then I find out this dude named Campbell did everything he could to shatter that because of his own, narcissistic needs or whatever. Now I'm like, oh, screw Campbell. But I don't know what the bond
I don't know any
is.
of that.
I mean, it could just be
Yeah,
he was breaking the bond like a bail bond. So
yeah,
he was a criminal, and I bonded him out so that he could be out before trial, and then he skipped trial, and so now I'm at $100,000. But I don't know what the bond is. So yeah, and me personally, this is the first one that I can't say that I would continue reading. It's
yeah.
just so telly that
There's
this definitely isn't
too
my
many
type
things
of
that
reading.
yeah, there's too many things that just don't mean anything to me here. Like,
On a positive note, much better grammar.
yeah,
Like you need a comma after on that third line. She didn't want to come, comma, and I didn't want to stay. But I mean, it's
no, no,
and the cool thing is you don't have to buy a new comma because the second to the last line you can just
mm,
take that comma and move it up because some of the islands seem like is one statement, so there's no comma there. So you don't have to purchase another comma. You can literally just take that comma and move it up.
yeah. So the grammar is solid, all that is good. So you don't have to worry about that as the author, but you do have to start in a more in the moment and
You're in
actually
first person.
attach me to the character. Yeah.
First person is the quintessential limited POV.
Yeah. So
You can't just tell, and that's the problem with first person. First person is the best at hiding info dumps, which means that if you don't pay attention, your entire thing turns into one info dump, which is what this
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Because it all feels
All
like stream of
right.
consciousness dialogue.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like a stream of consciousness. All right. Like you're telling the reader the
Yeah.
story. And yeah. All right. Story 6. When the sun set, the collector would knock on the door. I had to get there before it was too late. Only Grandpa was home, and I didn't want him to be alone. Don't worry, Jex, I'll manage to pay, he had told me, but by now he was probably lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, too afraid to move, knowing even the slightest exertion might cost him the ability to pay the tax. I still have an hour left. I needed to use the remaining daylight. Looking west, I saw the tall buildings of Central District, some taller than the wall dividing us in the periphery. Golden lights started appearing across the buildings as the sun dipped. Cobaltino had said you could walk the central district at midnight with more light than under a full moon, almost like daylight. In the periphery, we weren't used to such light. Last time I saw it was a week ago at school. A Dominion city planner visited our classroom like a celebrity, holding a handkerchief to his nose as if our oxygen was dirty. He asked us to close the blinds so he could light a bulb in the dark. I remember Cobaltino staring at it, entranced like a fly down to honey. Admire the light that exists by the grace of the Vires, said the official, and thanks to the joint efforts of your families. Kid, what'll it be? Ah, my turn. It would be tough, but it was time to buy vegetables. The square was filled with makeshift stalls, popping up like moss between the cobblestones. Not even the worst of the periphery dared mess with the vendors, gritty old women with rough hair and worn scarves. They spread smells of nutmeg, vinegar, and lemony fish through the dusty air. 3 potatoes, I said, big ones if you have them. Celebrating something, the old woman asked, raising her eyebrows. Oh yes, big day. It's tax day, I said with a shrug. That said it all. She sighed as she weighed the food. Okay. This had so much potential, I hated putting up my hand. But there is this whole section is just a flashback.
And backstory.
And backstory, which we do not need right this moment.
No.
I was so invested in this tax day, I was like, holy shit, what is the tax? Right? Because it
what
had
is the
that
tax
it
that
had
is
that
terrifying
yes.
to pay.
It had that feeling like tax is the extraction of your energy. Tax is the removal of time. Tax, like it had one of those like oppressive, government feelings where like the tax is going to be something epic. And I was there, man. And then instead of going to deal with that or whatever, or like dealing with like getting the potato, which I can see is that being the
See,
part of the tax.
that's where I have a problem. But go on.
So I'll get to why that wasn't it. But instead of dealing with any of that, I go into the flashback on the light.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care right now about the light. I care about Grandpa.
You've made me care about this tax.
Yeah, you've made me care about the tax, and then you forget about it to tell me about the light. Like, it annoyed me to have to put up my hand because of that. Don't do that.
So the reason why I put up my hand on the potato side is, so let's just say that highlighted section right there, all the backstory is cut. This is the tone. It's tax day. It's a terrible day. We're all going to die. Grandpa's going to die. He is shivering in bed. Yeah, I'll take 3 potatoes, please. And some big ones because, we're celebrating. It's tax day. That is a huge tonal shift from terror and death and bad to relaxed and happy. And
so I'll tell you why that didn't throw me out. Like I would continue if that highlighted piece was gone, I would continue reading, and I'll tell you why. When she says celebrating something and he says, "Oh yes, big day, it's tax day," I read that as sarcasm because that said it all. She sighed as she weighed the food. For me, he was being sarcastic, but that is not actually on the page. I just read the tone that way.
No, it is on the page. That is there. What I'm saying is, again, that opening couple of paragraphs does such a great job. This is exactly what we're talking about, like in the last story. This makes me actually concerned. I actually care. Buying potatoes?
Yeah, but no. So I understand that because here we go, right? It's the energy management device on my right forearm. Potatoes is a high energy food. So if you put potatoes into yourself, you generate energy.
Great. That's the tone that needs to be in here.
Yeah.
Finally, it was my turn. I had to get these as quick as possible so that I can get them in me and get them back to Grandpa so that we have the energy for tax day.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm not saying it needs to be that over the top because maybe this world is more used to this. In that case, then maybe Grandpa needs to react just bit less
Yeah.
to it. I'm just saying it's such a weird tonal shift for me. That's what threw me out.
Yeah.
It seemed like we're all gonna die, but before we die, how about we play a game of jacks real quick because it's cool.
Yeah. So
That's what
yeah,
it
so
felt like to me.
100%. And there is a little bit of a tonal shift that I think you could work on by having him be more eager. I think it would also be important to describe that he's standing in the market right now.
There's no setting.
Yeah. So there's no setting until we
Yeah,
reach
this
the point
this
of the market.
entire section of backstory with the lights,
Yeah.
use that to
To,
ground me where I'm at with the
yeah,
people
to
around me and the
actually,
stall and all of
yeah,
that. And now I'm grounded again.
yeah,
Whose head am I in? Where am I at?
yeah.
The where am
So
I
just
at is
describe
paramount.
the location and why I'm here. Describe upfront, I need those potatoes.
Yeah.
So that it's not a surprise when we reach the potatoes and you're like, potatoes. Yeah.
And also, here's a great example of one layer of interiority, which is the opposite layer,
Yeah.
where she's like, oh, celebrating something, and he's like, oh yes, big day, tax day. He said with a shrug, while inside he was screaming his head off, hurry,
Mm,
lady, I've got to go. Like, I'm not saying do it at that level, but I'm just saying I'm using that excuse to say readers love to be inside of a character when they're feeling one thing, but externally they're showing a completely different feeling
yeah.
because the reader then understands that the character, like in this case, will be putting on a brave face,
Mm,
whereas internally they are freaking out or whatever.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
this would be a great example of if you want him to do a casual little whatever, and then interiorly, I get different
Yeah.
that he's not.
Yeah. So, and just in terms of this flashback bit, I will tell you what I was told when I once submitted a piece like this to like a convention, and it was a flashback on page 1 is an auto reject.
A lot of times, most agents are like that.
Yeah. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, like I was into this, like I the opening paragraphs up to
Mm,
here. Great.
mm,
I was on
mm,
board. I am there, man.
mm-hmm,
Our boy has got to get, whatever he needs to pay this tax. And clearly this tax is a problem. Like,
mm-hmm.
like all of that on board. And from here, like, because I just briefly sort of scanned through it, from here, the energy management device, all of this, like, I am on board with this. We're setting up a very interesting world here. But this this needs to go. Yeah. All right. Ready?
Yeah. I mean, I got nothing else.
Yeah. All right, cool. Sorry, you froze for a moment, so that might just be me.
No, it was
Okay.
me. I
Oh,
was staring.
okay.
I was just very still.
All right.
I was
Story.
thinking, I was in my own world. I was thinking about all the things that I would recommend to that author,
Yeah.
if they were in like one of my critique groups in the writers'
Mm,
room or whatever, because there's a ton of opportunities there.
mm. Yeah, but it is like it's a cool opening. Like I like
Yeah.
I like that
And it
concept of a
seems like a cool
story.
world where
Yeah.
physical energy
Yeah.
is currency. Because that's where I was thinking. I was reading all of that and like, anyway, I'm not
Yeah.
going to say it here because that would be, if this
Yeah.
author wants to send it back to a live critique, then we'll go through and I can throw some things at them, or they can join me in the writer's room.
By all
Because
means, send it to live critique, writer's room. Yeah.
remember, you can join the writer's room for free, writersroom.us.
Mm.
And right now we're actually doing a special where for $1 you can get 14 days of the actual writers room, the paid area. So you can get weekly critiques by us and all sorts of crazy things. But it's free to join. So you can just join too without even paying $1. And then once a month you could bring something like this to me and live me and you could sit there and critique it.
Yeah.
So writersroom.us, man, it's the best location on the internet for writers, in my opinion. And yes, I am biased.
All right. Story 7. Teetering at the border of his consciousness, the old man spat out another tooth. His plea with her to kill him had only upset the lunar woman more. Please, he rasped, no more, just kill me. he said to Tara, who stood over him, her broad shoulders rising and falling as she sobbed into blood-soaked hands. Your mind is sick, T, he murmured. The whispers, it's not real. Blood spouted from his mouth as he fought to make each word audible. Oh, I am very real, you horny old geezer, thought Tara's passenger, coiled and lurking behind her eyes. I'm as real as you are, sitting bloodied and chained to that chair in the eccentric dwelling of yours, so often the Judas kiss of your kind. I talk in Tara's ear, I spun the wool over her eyes, I let her brain secrete a hormone cocktail, and the god touches her face. Resigned at the futility of his effort, the old man found Tara's teared up eyes. Tara, please, this is insanity. How can I be this wretched alien thing you accuse me of being? You know me, almost from the first day you came back to Earth. His voice no louder than a breath. Okay. I am confused.
Mm-hmm.
I was confused from the opening paragraph, and it did not get
Mm-hmm.
better.
Mm-hmm. That's that first thing.
Um,
Whose head am I in?
yeah,
Because I'm in the old man's head. I don't know if I'm ever in Tara's head, but I'm definitely in some weird thing that's inside of Tara's head. I'm in that
yeah.
head.
And where am I? And
We're in some rich person's house. I kind of got that, but it's not, but I can't see it.
yeah, like,
But also,
uh,
the
uh,
second paragraph, and the reason why I'm raised my hand at the second paragraph, that is all as you know, Bob dialogue. Every single
yeah,
character in this scene that can hear this, which is I'm thinking Tara and the thing in Tara's head, already know 100% of this information. This paragraph is written for the reader, which
yeah,
means I'm now thrown out of the story because you're talking directly to me.
yeah.
You've broken the fourth wall, and I'm not immersed in the story anymore.
Maybe we're in Tara's head. I don't know.
So that would be cool if I we're shifting a lot of these into editing mode, but
Yeah.
oh my goodness, if I was in the head of like if I cared about this person, but they're not this person, they're actually have been body snatched and replaced
Mm,
by a duplicate that's an alien, and I've got to do it, but then I'm like, but what if I'm wrong? And then there's a voice in my head that, I think is just my
mm,
consciousness that's like, but you're not wrong. Look at him. Look at his eyes. You can tell he's an alien. You have to
mm,
kill him. You won't be safe unless you do. And then I'm struggling with this pain of wanting to kill this person that I love, but they're not the person I love because they've been replaced, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, oh my goodness, I would be so enwrapped in that.
yeah.
But this is,
I was too confused.
yeah,
I just
but I'm not grounded.
I was ungrounded. Yes, I'm ungrounded in the story.
Yeah.
I'm adrift, unmoored in the void with little flashes. So yeah. Solidify your opening, ground us in something, ground us in a location, in a place. If this is omniscient, fine, but then ground us in the scene. All right.
And I would highly encourage you to get rid of the as you know Bob dialogue and look
Yeah.
for an organic way. I 100% guarantee you every bit of this information you can get to the reader in the first page or two organically without just literally breaking the fourth wall and telling the reader what's going on here. Because that's what
Yeah.
this does.
Yeah.
You're telling the reader that there's a passenger coiled behind her eyes, that he is as real to her as the man sitting in the chair. He talks to her, talks. I mean, I talk in her ear. You literally said that. I spun the wool over her eyes. Is Tara hearing all of this in her head? Because at that point she should be like, oh wait, devil on
Yeah.
my shoulder. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
weird. Yeah.
this
So yeah.
this
You might know what's going on in here. I don't. As
I
the
think I know what's
author.
going on. I just think the execution,
No,
I
no,
would
what I'm saying
challenge
is like
them
the
to,
my to the author, I'm like, you might know exactly what's happening here. I feel very ungrounded in this moment.
right.
Like I understand what's going on here, but I don't feel
You
any
don't know whose
connection
head
to
you're
it.
in. You don't really know the
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So
Again, this is a crazy cool idea.
yeah.
I would so read this story if the execution was there.
Yeah.
Beautiful idea, beautiful concept. Hook me, hook, line, and sinker. I'm just would challenge this author to really push. And I think let's get back to what we're supposed to be doing. We've kind of slipped in editing mode. As an agent, because this is not in any head, again, it comes
Yeah.
down to this is going to get rejected by me because I'm going to be going, wow, am I going to have to spend a lot? I'm going to have, not only am I going to spend time making edits for the author to make, line editing it and giving it to him and having him make it, I'm
Yeah.
going to have to teach the writer to
Yeah.
write and to tell story. And that's now even more time on my shoulders
Yeah.
that I don't have. So from a personal standpoint, I'm so hooked on this idea. If it was executed a little better, you
Mm.
would have me as a fan. But from an agent standpoint, I feel
Yeah.
like they're going to reject this because of it's convoluted, it's not grounded. That second paragraph is one big, as you know, Bob, dialogue, breaking of the fourth wall. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be rejected for all of that.
Yep. All right. Story 8. Good soldiers don't fear their own blood. Poor ones don't fear it enough. V wasn't sure which one she was just yet. Seeing blood meant a whole slew of things. It meant the old rag was soaked, which meant she had misjudged how deep the cut was, which meant she needed to slow her pulse, which meant she really ought not to be running. A pity she was running then. Maybe this was simply it for her hand. One scar too many for the old left mitt. Those knuckles, this wrist, they hadn't felt right since she was what, 8, 9, whatever those claws had done. Well, it's not like the Feng fall had marred something pristine, had it? Her hand was ruined. Nothing new there. Would anyone even call this running, though? Stumbling was more like it. Phaeton armor, worn by good soldiers or not, was not built for running. The straps were worn and wet. Every hinge creaked. A pair of hand-me-down greaves slapped the shins they were supposed to be tied to. Nothing new there either. But she couldn't dwell on the blood or the armor or the fengfall or even the summer storm rolling down the mountain. Halden was dead. That was what he asked her to do, so she ran, over rocks, over roots, over a river if she had to. Really, the only thing that needed to stay in her head was that line from his will. What was it again? A little alliteration, yes? Follow the fog. Sounded right, and there was plenty of white stuff in these lowlands, even more waiting in the woods. Almost like Holden knew it'd be that way. Only deeper in the forest, did the fog give way to an amber glow, to a forge wagon's fire, barely a light in the rain. That's what it was. Follow the fog to the forge. V could have collapsed right there in the mud, right in those ruts those huge wheels had carved out. But she'd run and she'd bled for this. Not for the fog or the forge, but for its owner. For the centaur, for him. Okay. Uh,
Why did you not stop reading? Why do you think an agent would not reject this?
so there is an interest in somebody being in this kind of a state and running. Like somebody having their hand is dangling by a thread, they're wearing ill-fitting armor, they're like this person is clearly not in great shape, right? There is something deeply wrong here. And they are running despite that, or stumbling, or forcing themselves to keep moving forward. That is interesting. It is interesting to find out why. Um, it might carry me. But my biggest problem with it, and the reason why it might, in my opinion, get rejected, is sure, the running's there, but there's no grounding in where we actually are. And there's a bit too much, like, I don't know. Why did you say stop?
So I made a face before I stopped because I want to keep reading personally.
Mm,
Plenty of things to edit. There's a lot of issues with this that throw the reader out. It slips. It's I don't think it's ever in real limited, so it pretty much is just I think it feels like it's all omniscient. But the reason why I raise my hand is because I think that it's a little too abstract for too long for an industry person to
mm,
stick with it. If they have to wait too long to find out an answer, they feel I know for a fact that the industry feels a very specific way about readers
mm.
that isn't necessarily true,
Yeah.
but they feel that readers have no attention span. And like, well,
Mm,
then why are epic fantasy books 300,000 words long and they're selling like hotcakes? Like, why are hour-long YouTube
mm.
shows or 2 hour-long YouTube shows or 3 hour-long YouTube shows getting millions and millions of views if people don't have attention spans? I
Yeah.
don't I don't buy into that. But the reason why I raised my hand with a grimace because I wanted to keep reading, but I was like, but I'd be
Mm,
lying if I said the agent would keep reading. The the kind of abstract opening was cool,
mm.
but then it just kept going and going and going. And I know too
It,
many agents, and I just feel like they don't have the patience for something like this.
yeah.
So where I do believe readers might, and again, I have a ton of edit suggestions that I would do for this. So if this
Mm.
person wants to send this back for editing or join the writer's room, I would love to kind of hammer on this a little bit. But I just don't think an agent would.
Yeah.
Um,
So the
so that's
problem
why
is
I
it
grimace
never,
because I liked
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So like you said, it never concretifies.
Right.
And there is an opportunity here, like where in this paragraph where you go into like stumbling, etc., to concretify where we're running, what is around us,
Why? Why?
and
Yeah.
why we're running. Yeah.
It just stays a little bit too abstract for a little bit too long. And while that's fine for most readers, I think I just,
Mm.
and maybe it's just because, like, it's funny, I just bitched at them having a bad opinion of readers. And then I'm like, but I have a bad opinion of industry people. And I get that. So I could be
Yeah.
wrong on that. But
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
talked
But
to
yeah,
too many agents and
it
editors. I know too many of them. And I know
yeah.
what they bitch about. And this, I just don't think that this would capture an agent's
I I
attention.
think here, I think here is where you want to concretify
Yeah.
the what is going on around us. All right. But yeah, I mean, I it was a good opening in my opinion. So we had some we had some interesting stuff going on. We got like um some materiality from her. She's in a state of like, you know, badness,
Yeah.
which is always
Pain,
interesting.
agony.
Pain, all that is
The
good.
other the edit that I would give to them is I would love to feel some
Yeah.
emotions. There's no emotions in this.
Yeah,
Is
there's no
she
emotions.
running afraid or is she running on adrenaline? Is she
Yeah.
running
My
just
assumption is that she's running
on
on
numbness?
numbness. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I assume. Yeah.
I'd like to feel that.
Yeah.
Um, and before anybody makes comments of this in the comments below, yes, we are fantasy authors. We make up words. So
Yeah.
please don't hit with a concretify. That's not a real word. No, it's not, but we said it because it works. You know what we meant. So
I'll make up words if I wanna.
that's right.
See if I
So
don't.
there's no reason to make a comment on that.
Let's move
So
on to story 9. They say men were born to greatness and others to mediocrity. Mithrox, apparently, was born to shift through filth. The paper mill he worked in stood at the edge of Dejar Vortal's 18th rib. Day and night, contraptions swallowed the rags from the upper ribs and processed them to feed the city's voracious bureaucracy. The proud citizens buried their guilty consciences down here, within reach of the pneumatic pulse of the mail tubes and elevators, but no closer than necessary. It was a place for the unseen, for those who didn't want to be seen. What a perfect fit for me. His lot for the day was a cage duty. The massive wirework frame dominated the confined chamber, spinning with a metallic screech and shaking out dusty clouds, thick enough to choke a rattlebuck. Mithrox spat, but the gritty coating on his teeth lingered. Though they let in the dim glow of gas lanterns from the street, the few narrow windows did little to clear the air. He grimaced. After 5 years in the mill, what disgusted him most wasn't the work itself, but how good he'd gotten at dealing with this shit. The cage shuddered to a halt with a final mechanical groan. Mithrox dumped out the rags and hauled the next cart toward the damned thing. Fabric tatters clung stubbornly to his sweat-slicked skin as he refilled the machine with the usual woolen coats, rough linen from merchant stalls, and cotton underwear. The monotonous rhythm of his work had lulled him into a trance when a splash of burgundy, that had absolutely no business being there, pierced the corner of his vision. Mithrox pried it free from the tangle of cloth, unearthing a little book. His heartbeat quickened as he ran his fingers along the buttery soft cover. It must have cost more than he had made in a season. A quick glance confirmed the iron doors to the chamber remained shut. Nobody in their right mind wanted to enter this dusty hell anyway. So why not take a look inside? Okay, I'm there. So why I think this works is we get a character who's in a situation that we know the character hates, right? But for some reason they're here, so that's interesting. It's interesting to try and figure out like why are they here and so on. We are very well grounded in the scene. We've got multiple sensory elements that we're getting from scent to touch to so on. Um, and then we immediately get a thing that is out of the ordinary, and we know it's out of the ordinary because the character reacts like it's out of the ordinary. And we're like, okay, so this is interesting. What's this?
No major grammatical errors. No big info dumps. No flashbacks. We get interiority. There's enough of a mystery to keep me reading.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to have, you know,
And thank you to the author for not stopping to explain what a rattlebuck is. I'm sure we
yeah,
will eventually figure it out. Thank you for just
right.
using the word.
Because here's the thing, we can get what it means off of context. We
Yeah.
don't need to know what a rattlebuck is. We just know that it is very resistant to choking from dust clouds.
Yeah.
So,
Good
maybe
enough.
it lives in dust or whatever. I can get it from context. You don't have to then give me the history of rattlebucks.
Yeah.
And since rattle's in the beginning of it, I'm thinking snake. So by strategically naming things, you also
Mm.
start bringing things in. But yeah, so what I was saying was you don't need to open your opening paragraph with Mithric, Mithric's finger hovered over the nuclear bomb's detonation button.
Mm.
Yes, but do I actually push it? Millions will die if I do, but billions will die if I don't. Like, you don't have to start with that.
Yeah.
But you have to start with something that makes the reader go, all right, no, this is interesting. What's going to happen here? And that's what this one does. It doesn't
Yeah.
start with some nuclear bomb blowing up the
Yeah.
world conflict. But you get little things like, what a perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
So there's two lines of inner monologue. I love the first one. I did not like the second one, but again, that would be an edit.
Mm.
But that first one,
Mm.
perfect fit for me. Like, that says so much about this
Yeah.
character. Of how he sees himself, about how he sees his place in the world.
Mm.
Like, just that's a beautiful
Fantastic.
line. I love that line.
Yeah.
And there is plenty here to make me go, and there's no massive grammatical errors or anything like that. So it's just like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna read this.
Also, that opening line is the opening two lines are fantastic. They say
Yeah.
some men were born to greatness and others to mediocrity. Mithrox, apparently, was born to shift through filth. Like it's just
And since just as a suggestion, since in the third paragraph you use the word shit anyway, man, the word shit up there is gonna have more punch than
yeah,
filth.
shift through shit. Yeah,
Yeah, shift through shit. Like,
yeah,
because we want that punch in the mouth right in the opening
yeah.
of our line to make the reader go, ooh, okay.
We're
And
getting punched.
you've got the word right there. I don't use cuss words in my fantasy,
Mm,
so when I read filth, it was fine. But
mm.
if I'm gonna hit the word shit anyway in your book, use it strong. Punch me in the mouth with it in that opening
Yeah,
sentence. Um,
absolutely. I I actually I actually read a super interesting thing the other day. Like, they say that from a biblical scholar who said that the Bible has curse words in it to emphasize things
mhm, mhm,
because that's what they do. Because they are rare, so they bring shock value.
right.
And in the same way, if you're going to use curse word, if you're going to use curse words like our world curse words, introduce them where they have shock value.
Because if we changed the second one to crap, it
Yeah,
doesn't actually change that sentence.
yeah,
Having shit in that second one versus crap, there's no power difference, in my
yeah,
opinion. So most, it meant that, but how good he'd gotten at dealing with this crap
yeah,
versus how good he'd gotten dealing with this shit. There's no difference in between the two, but there is a huge punch difference between shit and filth.
yeah. Agreed.
So that would
Yep.
be a little suggestion there.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
So
job.
overall, thumbs up. I think an agent would at least continue on to the next page.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
think so.
Story 10. Every single dragon rider can go fuck themselves with a splintered tree trunk. Pret- I mean, okay.
Great opening line.
That is a line. Pretentious, self-righteous jackasses bent on protecting us land dwellers from their floating continent of Dragonfall. While I'm far from a proper citizen, I didn't collect taxes and barely do anything. Okay, if they didn't take gold, but cattle and grain. Okay, they didn't take gold, but cattle or grain. Things they can't easily manage on their giant floating island. Name, a wizard asks. He wears a robe with the Dragon Rider's logo, a dragon with a man on its back. Elliot Sinclair, I reply. He looks at my pass and taps his staff on the ground. Purpose of visit. Visiting my mother. She lives in Deer. The staff glows blue. Bored. Okay. Yeah, I'm also gonna stop. That opening line goes hard.
I love it.
Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I also love the paragraph, the second line up to there. Pretentious, self-righteous jackasses bent on protecting us land dwellers from their floating continent of Dragonfall. That's great.
The brilliant thing about this is because dragon riders and,
Mm,
everything about dragons is all about nobility and
mm,
saving and all this stuff. Starting off with a line that breaks that expectation right out of the gate
mm.
and paints them in a way of, no, they're not the good guys.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
yeah.
Freaking love that.
I'm 100% there. But then the problem is that here, from here on, it gets clunky,
Very.
and then suddenly we're with the wizard, and we don't know where we are. And apparently we're boarding a ship or something. I don't know. Like, it just
And the last
like
one is kind of a backstory
yeah,
flashback piece.
yeah,
So look, my finger might not be 100% on the pulse of what the publishing industry is pumping out these days because I have left the actual
Mm,
industry. But I still know for a fact that there is a large swath of people that refuse to read present tense third person.
yeah.
I see it all the time now in the unpublished realm where so many people are writing in third person present tense, and I don't understand where they get it from because there's not much published in this
Mm,
tense. So I don't understand why people default to writing in present tense. But here's the thing, especially in fantasy, probably 40% of fantasy readers refuse to read third person present tense on principle. It's weird to read. Why would you lose 4 out of every 10 potential customers just because you chose to write in an awkward tense?
yeah.
So,
If you're gonna write present, if you want to write present tense, my advice would always be, wait, this is first person present tense.
no, it's third.
No, it's first. It's first person
Oh, it
present.
is. It
Yeah.
is. It is.
It felt like third person
It did. It felt like third person.
because we're getting, yeah. But it's first person. It's
No,
first
it's
person
100%
present
first
tense.
person.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
So
But yeah.
it's
So,
poorly executed first person present tense.
yeah. Yeah. But my
But you're right.
my
It
bigger
is. It
problem,
is
yeah.
first
It is
person.
my bigger
Why
problem
did it
is that
feel so much like third?
because we have all of this like basically narration
Yeah,
that like once a month the flight of dragons comes to surface, like it feels narrative, like third
it
person.
really did. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's 100% first person.
It's
I don't
first
even know
person.
why my brain went to third.
But my problem is that I don't know where I am, and I think that you need to concretify from here. That needs to go, and this needs to become a concrete, like, this is where I am, this is why I'm waiting in line. And you also don't need the whole thing of like, I scored big, blah, blah, blah. Like, just, you know, like all that can come a little later.
We can
Like,
learn that
get me
organically.
onto the ship to visit mom, since that's what we're doing, apparently.
Yeah, present tense is more prevalent in first person.
It is.
I don't know why this felt like such third person to me.
It's because I was also like I was for a moment I was like it's third person and I was like no man I've just read the I pronoun
Yeah,
like I've 100% just read the I pronoun.
yeah,
Like, why am I struggling with this? um
that is weird
yeah,
because
but
there's no
yeah,
doubt. So, and I'm staring at it, trying to figure out what it was. It needs work. It needs a lot of work to smooth it out. I would challenge this writer to write it both in past tense and in present tense because there's still a percentage of readers that won't read first person present tense either. It's much
mm,
smaller, but and this feels YA except for a whole bunch of cussing up front. But there's so much cussing and just blatant porn sex in YA now. I don't even know why you call it YA because it's not YA. But first person present tense is very prevalent in
mm,
YA. So the readers are much more used to it and inclined to read it. But this is convoluted and it's hard to follow.
yeah,
And I'm still trying to figure out why, even though I'm reading the word I and me, why I thought this was third person because it just screams third person.
yeah, there's something about it that's written like a third but I don't know why,
Yeah,
but it does read like third person rather than first
it
person.
does. And it's so weird. So anyway, it needs some smoothing out. And a lot of it has to do with the present tense. So like that line that you stumbled over, the while I'm far from a proper citizen, I didn't collect taxes and barely do anything. That's it doesn't even feel like English
Yeah,
because of the present tense.
yeah. And what,
So
like, do all citizens collect taxes? Like, that doesn't make sense. They pay taxes,
yeah.
surely. Why would
Well,
they
also, who
collect
are they?
taxes? I
Okay,
don't.
they didn't take gold, but cattle and grain. Who are they?
The dragons, I assume.
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, So yeah, so the
Because it
first
could also
line,
be proper citizens, because technically that's what it points back
yeah,
to. They points back to proper citizen.
yeah. So the first line, the second line goes hard. Um, great two lines.
Hmm.
Um, and then the concept sounds interesting. Like I like the idea of somebody being all like, no man, dragon riders are the pits.
Yeah.
Like, but you need to then ground the reader more firmly in the scene and get us onto the boat without flashbacking.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that would be my advice to this writer. And that is that.
Yes.
So that was once again our presentation of the publishing game. And we hope that you enjoyed those 10 stories. Let us know in the comments which you think would go through and which wouldn't. And if you are interested in critiques from us, send us a chapter, send us 1,000 words to releasingyourInnerDragon at gmail.com. And if you want to participate in our next round of the publishing game, which will probably be in like 3 to 5 months, send that to Releasing Your Inner Dragon. Make sure you make it clear which one of the two you are submitting it for. Please send it either in the body of the mail as text or in a Word document. Not a PDF, not anything else, just a Word document.
Yep.
Okay. And I think on that
Yeah.
note, we will see you soon for another one.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.
If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the Writer's Room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.